Posting the stream now. Alright, so we went over it quickly last time. Go over it again. Iron out any small issues. So rendering your model. So at this point we should have the texture on there, everything lined up, a good pixelation, the different materials. We learned about blend last time. Get your blends there. We'll learn about Phong on the next model here. So again, with the rendering here, so we want to start off by making our render cam. All right, and that's just a matter of making a new camera. We'll come up here to panels, perspective, new. Automatically make me a separate camera from my original perspective camera. And then with this guy, can line them up and find just a good pose, a good composition to get that final picture, that final render. All right, you can use film gate. Get them lined up. Now, if it doesn't say 1920 1080 up here, we come over here to our render settings, which is over here with these this group of movie clappers. Render settings will be the one with the small gear, and click on that. Make sure we're in Arnold renderer. All right, and then we're gonna scroll down, renderable cameras. Just gonna go ahead and select our new camera, which I'm gonna go ahead and rename real quick. I'm gonna call it my render cam. Alright, so make sure my render cam is selected here in renderable cameras. And come down here, and again, if you don't see 1920 1080 at the top, you can hit presets underneath image size. Come down here to HD 1080. Go ahead and select that, and leave everything else default. Alright, hit close, and then your film gate should update. Alright, and then once you got your buddy in position here, you want to lock the camera in place. There's a couple of ways to do that. Last time I went over going to the channel box and selecting everything, right clicking, then hit lock selected. Also, another way to lock your camera is a button right here next to the camera button. There's a camera with a teal lock on it. You can also tap that to lock everything in place, so it won't move when I try to tumble or pan or zoom. Alright, now that that is in place, you can get a ground plane. For this, I'm just going to use a simple polygonal polygonal plane here. Stretch it out so it can catch the seal's contact shadows here. Go ahead and move it up a little bit just so the seal's touching it. Alright, awesome. And then next, we're going to need a couple of lights. Now, last time we went over Maya lights, but since we're using Arnold renderer, there's more sophisticated lights to use here. All right, and instead of going to the Create node, say up here, Create Lights, and using any of these will work, but not as well as our Arnold lights. So let's come over here to Arnold at the very top. Come down to lights, and the first one I'm going to use is area light. The area light is if you ever taken a say a portrait back in high school, Area light is those lights that have a big box light. It has a cover on it, and it's just meant to add a lot of soft light in a large area. So, as far as lighting arrangements go, we're going to use something of a standard approach to many portraits, many photographs. So it's called the three-point lighting. Okay, so the first one we'll need to worry about is our key light, and our key light is going to be this area light here. So I'm going to go over here, go ahead and rename it. Call it key light, or key underscore LGT for light. Alright, then I'm going to put this guy in position. So the box is the source of the light. The line is where it's pointing, obviously. And I want that line to point right at my model here. So I'm going to try to keep it pretty close to the camera on either side. Just looking to get basic highlights and shadows here. Alright, so when I have it in place somewhere where I think it will work pretty well, I'm going to come over here, I'm going to click in this box so that when I hit this button, which is the render now button, the blank movie clapper up top, it will render this view. It brings up our window. It'll take some time to render the whole thing here. Okay, and so instead of having this guy float around, I'm just going to go ahead and put it in the bottom left panel here. And it looks like I have some work to do with my light. I don't really see anything. His eye is popping up a little bit, but that just tells me the light is too dim. So come down here to panels. Panel. And then render view. Alright, and it comes up with the same menu, just tucked away in the corner here. Alright, so that took a little bit of time. Usually with rendering, we want to keep things down efficiently. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go ahead and, that little speck of the eye, I'm just going to go ahead and draw a box around that part, a red box. Just by clicking and dragging, and that red box indicates just that small section. I want the computer to render that part out and leave everything else alone. That way I can get faster feedback for all my changes here. Alright, and so with that, I'm going to bring this light a little closer, make it a little bigger, and then come over here to settings. My attribute editor. The second tab is my key light shape here. Alright, then I'm going to change the color. I'm actually going to use color temperature here. So check that on. I'll lower it just a bit here. And then I'm going to go ahead and bump up the intensity to 1. And also, I'm going to off-check normalize. What normalize does is it tries to keep everything from being blown out, essentially. Alright, then I can come back to my view, and instead of hitting the blank movie clapper here or up here, I'm going to hit the one that's contained in the teal square, and I'll just render out that small section for me. It should be way quicker. Yeah. So it's coming up. Actually, I'm going to go with more higher temperature to get that blue. Cool. Just adjusting it a little bit so it get the right highlights going. Alright, and then if everything looks good in the square, render out the whole thing. Get a full idea of what kind of lighting I'm working with this first key light here. Okay, so not bad for a good key light. You can see my cast shadows. I got some other shadows here on the other side, but not perfectly black on the model here. And you can see my detail on the model. All right, so we're gonna roll with this key light as is. So I feel like you don't have to, but it just helps to make sure we don't misplace it. So I'm gonna go ahead and lock my key light in place here. All right, the next light we want to use is our rim light. And for that, we'll go up here to Arnold, Lights. And then I'm going to use a, let's see, mesh light, portal, visible sky. I'm going to go ahead with area light. And then our third light will be a little different. But for right now, we'll keep it as simple as possible. All right, so for our rim light, what we want to accomplish with our rim light here is we want a nice, strong highlight on the back. So it cuts out the top half, mostly of the silhouette from the background. Bring this back. So the idea I should have, the idea here is to have the model in between the rim light and the camera. Swing this around, so right about there. Make it considerably bigger here. Tilt it down just a little bit so it's pointing more at the model, a little higher. And usually the rim light is pretty strong. So go over here to my attribute editor. It's also usually white too. So leave it white. Exposure, punch in 3. You can also make adjustments to the intensity. So intensity is more of how strong the light is. Exposure is more about how far it spreads. Keep in mind the relationship between these two. Exposure pretty much multiplies intensity here. All right, and also color does have a certain effect. So if you lower the color to say black, it's also the same as punching in 0 for intensity. So keep in mind your values for the color of your light. Alright, so let's see how that works out. Again, the red box, the selected rendering. Alright, so there's a little bit of change here. I can't really tell So when you make subtle changes in your render editor, it's a good practice to go ahead and save your current render image. And the way you do that is you hit this picture with a teal box around it, and that'll make a quick little saved copy there. And then you should have a scroll bar underneath this panel. And so when you come back up here, let's say 10 for some sort of effect, come up here and re-render. Still got that hourglass for some reason. Okay. Alright, so then I have my current render and then my saved render here. Go ahead and save this one so I can see my progress. Don't really have much progress, so that tells me I need to make this light a little stronger here. So I'm going to bring it in. Probably too close, but we'll see what we'll get here. Alright, it's a little better. Oh, and I forgot to uncheck normalize. There we go. For the area lights, uncheck normalize. It'll save a lot of headaches. There it is. Okay. So then I can flip through my images again, see the changes. Okay, there we go. We got a little bit of a rim light coming through. There we go. There, this is popping through here. Let's see it. Got a, looking for a white line to come through, just on the edge. So it looks like it is coming through. So I'm going to render out the whole thing. There we go, looking pretty good. Missing a little bit on the nose here. So I'm just going to make this guy whiter. Alright, get a quick render for that nose. Oh yeah, much better, much better. Alright, and that's our rim light. So let's go ahead and name it, lock in place. Alright, and our next final light is going to be really subtle. It's going to be our fill light. Alright, up here in Arnold, lights. And then for this one, I'm going to use the skylight here. Might be able to use a, well no, there's no ambient light. So we'll just use skylight here. Alright, so with the third light, it's going to be called our fill light. And the job of this light is just to kind of fill in the shadows, so they're not just boring black shadows here. Alright, so with this latest light, it's just a massive dome that encompasses, or should encompass, the whole scene here. Go to an attribute editor. The fill light's going to be much more subtle. So I'm going to go ahead and dial this down to like 0.2. Alright, and considering it's going to be subtle, I'm going to go ahead and save this image so I can compare it to my next render here. And then just running through the parameters here, make sure everything is pretty much okay default wise. Uncheck normalize and save yourself the headache. Probably going to uncheck cast shadows for here. We'll test it out later on to see if it does any better. Alright, and then since my key light is pretty warm, I'm going to make my fill light pretty cool, just to contrast it. So I'm going to pick like maybe a green here. Dilute the green up. Again, try to make it as subtle as possible. Alright. Let's see, then I just want to take a look at these shadows. So select that in my render view, render that selection. Okay, pretty good, but really bright, so I'm going to turn it down. Let's say 0.1. Alright, it's getting there. Make it even more subtle. Half 0.1 and get 0.05 here. Alright, that's pretty good. Right, not bad. The shadows have color, right? So it's a little more interesting. And we'll see how this plays in with the rest of the lights by rendering the full view here. Alright, so it looks like it's working really well. So I got the subtle fill light filling in the shadows with the green I selected. We have our key light, the main light. It has a little bit of blue coming through for the most part on the model. And then I got my rim light that kind of dances around the silhouette here, cutting it out from the background. Alright. And I'm not even going to bother with cast shadows, so that's definitely good enough. So this is what we want to accomplish with our with all our models, 3-point lighting. So let's go ahead and set up those Arnold lights. All right. Let's see if we can get a good render, a 3-point lighting render out before the end of class, and that way we can move on to our next project, which is the quadruped. The same process, just a different type of creature. Okay, any questions?
I do have
What's up?
questions and also maybe a little bit of help as well.
Oh, sure, sure. All right.
So, this is no good. I was just trying to see, really just trying to put the texture onto this. Do I have to make this again, basically?
We never think anything.
Oh.
We know that last time.
Okay. So, how do you material and just put it in?
It's on YouTube. It's been recorded a couple times. Look it up. Look it up in the stream. There's a video there. It'll show you the whole process.
Okay, so I have been listening and following along with this because I'm like just one step behind as far as adding the skin, adding the texture. And so this was just pretty much adding lighting to it in the background.
Right.
Okay. So when I was inserting, this is the UV grid. So I inserted the pattern onto the grid with the
Did you flatten it out?
distortion added to it. Flatten it.
In the UV shells? Did you flatten it out?
How does that work? Because this is the UV shell right now.
It's in the stream, man. So you should have flat UV shells. It should look like a dolphin in UV at the beginning. So it should look like a skin dolphin. Review it on the streams there. It's posted in. It's posted in the stream. The UV videos. It's a stronger rim. You can tell it's in your point here. You look that shit cut up from that blackness. Yeah, I'm with the wood now. That texture. It's pretty neat though. Yeah, so she's horrible. No, we was software crash out. Okay, guys, and just to get this on the record here, so for submitting these guys, we'll submit these on Wednesday. It'll be due at the end of Wednesday, so 11:59 p.m. What we need to submit is the project folder, the folder with the scene, source images, and images folder. And then inside the scenes, there should be just one project file, the latest project file. It should be appropriately named, right? So the latest version. All right, in your images, you should have at least one render. All right, and the way you save out the render here is come to File, in your Render View panel, File, same image, and then you can save it to your images right here. Make sure to name that similar to the scenes folder, if not exactly after. So this is Knoxville Navy version 7. My ASCII format. I can just type in the same thing here. So, version 7, and instead of my ASCII, we're gonna use JPEG format. So come down here, type in JPEG here. All right, hit save, and then that will be in that folder. And then for source images, that's where all our textures go that we used for the model here. So I'm not too worried about any reference photos, just the textures, like the scene file and the render, and the 3 content things I'm looking for inside of those folders. And then once you have that together, we compress it like before. So our project folder, right click, it'll be send to compress folder, and you should be able to submit it that way. Now if it's too large, you would probably have multiple scene folders in there. So again, just the latest one. If some of the pictures are too large, along with the render, make sure you're in HD for the render. And then if it still doesn't work, mainly because of the source images, contact me, and then we'll just work out another way to send it. All right, so for next class, let's go ahead and have our quadruped picked out. So quadruped being a 4-legged creature, preferably something with hair.
This is still related to ocean animals?
Yeah, it's the same process as developing it.
Okay, but
Right.
but for this next project, just any 4-legged animal?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Any 4-legged animal, just to keep it more diverse, probably animal that has very little to do with water. So desert, forest type of creature. All right, so I'm just going to hang out here for a bit, and if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll get started on our next project next class.